All right, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I want to first thank you guys for attending our webinar. Today's webinar is Connecting People and Technology, and we're featuring one of our partners, Datto, and you'll hear more about them a little bit later. So first things first, a little housekeeping, what we're going to talk about, today's topics. Who's who will you be hearing from on today's webinar? What's the problem that we're here to talk about regarding connectivity? Why ultimately you should care? What do we do about it? And then how technology can help, and we'll pass it off to Datto to speak more about that. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A so that anybody who has any questions can ask any questions that you have, and we'll be happy to stay online for a few minutes to answer those. All right, so to get started, who are we going to talk to? So obviously, I am Jason Etheridge, president of LogicSpeak. We are a managed services provider of IT solutions based here in Roswell, Georgia, or the suburb of Atlanta. And we've been taking care of clients' technology for the past almost 17 years. So in some capacity, we've seen it all, and we are super grateful to be partnered with Datto. And we've got Ryan Grenrod from Datto. He's a networking specialist. I think that belies his experience. He's really a networking expert. He's based out of Rhode Island. Has been a fun fact, he's been to Atlanta 47 times and never gotten out of the airport. So I am intent over the next year or so now that I know that to change that and have him come visit us here in Atlanta. So we look forward to talking to him a little bit later. And Ryan, thank you so much for being part of our webinar today. All right, so what's the problem, right? Obviously we've got lots of problems these days with our pandemic, but what is the problem regarding communication and connectivity? More and more companies that we see are continuing to work from home, either temporarily through the pandemic, through quarantine, or we've actually talked to a lot of people who are making decisions to be permanently remote, and that obviously makes it more difficult to connect together. Traditional ways of connecting people at work are either unhealthy. We can't risk people getting infected, shutting our company down for 2 weeks or more, or they're just not possible. People are located in their homes, they're located at hotels or other places around the country, and we just can't connect in ways that we used to. Some of those, asking somebody how their weekend was when they walk in the office or first thing Monday morning, sitting in a break room and eating lunch together, things that used to be so commonplace before are just not possible now. Having company teamwork events that require close personal interaction and contact, like ropes courses and team building events, we just really can't do anymore. And social distancing and quarantining make human connections more difficult. Obviously, we have masks on, so we can't really see how that speech that I gave landed. We can't interact with people from a physical perspective to read their faces. And so, that all of these can lead to a lack of connection, which really kind of facilitates more loneliness and eventually increased frustration, and for us as companies, actually less loyalty. So why should we care? Some of that's obvious, but we found a quote that really kind of drives this home. A lack of sufficient connection is dangerous because social connection is a primal human need. Connection is also a superpower that, as the neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman says, makes human beings smarter, happier, and more productive. That's by Michael Lee Stallard, and back in March of this year, as the pandemic got started. We'll include the article for you guys as well, because there's lots of good content. But it goes on to say that loneliness, or translated a lack of connection, can lead to poor cognitive performance, impaired self-regulation and willpower, decreased physical and mental health, and then overall greater feelings of helplessness. So for us as companies and owners and employees at companies with coworkers, we can see obviously why that we need to continue to focus on connecting as coworkers and employees, and on the other side, helping employees to stay connected through the uncertainty of the pandemic and an impending potential recession will increase loyalty and trust in the company, and then overall productivity. So what do we do about it? For us, we've kind of come up with a few things that we've been doing here at LogicSpeak that can help, and so I thought I would at least go into a few of those with you. But ultimately, you have to communicate more, and I put a lot more. Before, when we were in the office, it's easy to have those sidebar conversations. Even if there's not a one-on-one schedule with your manager, you're talking to them all the time. But when we're remote, those things are all gone. And so in a vacuum of communication, our employees and our coworkers will make things up on their own, especially during times of uncertainty. So it's really, really critical that that what feels like over communication is probably just the right amount in terms of all staff meetings or just informal meetings, planning virtual and hybrid events like happy hours, games, and lunches. Those are harder to do virtually, but they're not impossible. We through the quarantine, the initial quarantine here in Georgia, we had virtual happy hours with our employees where everyone would get on a Zoom call. And to be perfectly honest, the first time we did it, the first 5 minutes were probably the most uncomfortable because it was just hard to kind of know how to interact, with this new medium in a social way. But after 5 minutes, we all started laughing and joking, and everything just really started to feel normal. And the more we did it, the more our employees were able to connect with each other. And we started to see even cross-departmental relationships to flourish because they were all on a call together. And then another idea for these virtual happy hours that we heard from a couple of our partners, ask people to send in a picture of their refrigerator. Open the refrigerator, take a picture, send it in. And then when you start your meetings or when you start, happy hours, have a contest to see who can guess whose refrigerator it is. The weirder and the funnier, the ingredients or the grocery items in the fridge, the better they are. And it helps to break the ice, helps people to feel more normal and to laugh. Also, we heard of another company doing virtual escape rooms. You can buy these online or download them, and together on a Zoom or a Teams meeting, you can just sit and figure out how to get out of the escape room, which was a lot of fun as well. Lastly, you have to lean into your core values. Whatever makes your company special, that's what in these times you need to lean into. And one of the things that my business coach talked to me about was, our mission as a company hasn't changed. The values that we embrace have not changed. The only thing that's changed is the context in which we do them, this pandemic and ultimately a potential recession. So we have to lean into even more the core values that we have as a company and as coworkers and employees. As an example, one of the core values here at LogicSpeak is that we care for you, which both applies to our clients, our partners, but as well as our employees. So for the month of August, every single day was an employee of the day. In the morning, we announced who that employee was, and throughout the day, they were inundated with nice messages on Teams. We use Microsoft Teams to collaborate, so little messages of encouragement, of thanks for all that they do. Even every now and again, somebody would bring in something special for them that they knew they loved, like a special coffee or flowers that were their favorite, or even one of our employees loves champagne truffles, and they got champagne truffles for the day. So. But the really neat thing about that was that the engagement across departments and the feelings of appreciation that nobody knew about before, and that we didn't take time to stop and do normally when we're in the office, because we're virtual, because we were remote, and because we were leaning into our core values, those just came flooding in, and everyone said, what a great thing that we did, and really showed how much we cared for each other as a company. So those kind of little things that we can plan to take into remote work or hybrid work are really, really critical. So how can technology help with that? We have, over the past several months, especially throughout the pandemic, have had a couple of webinars on how to collaborate better, how to use the capabilities in Microsoft 365, which many of our customers use. If you don't use that or G Suite, either one have a lot of collaboration capabilities built in. Specifically in Microsoft Land, Microsoft Teams for video, audio chat, textual chat, SharePoint for file and folder collaboration, to help you remember to do things while you're remote, and then Planner, and there's so many more. So leveraging the collaboration capabilities of your platform, whatever they are, is really key for technology to be able to make things possible in this disconnected world or disconnected environment that we find ourselves in. It may seem obvious, but making sure that your internet connections and your mobile technologies are as reliable and stable as possible. Because we're all working remotely more, because we have all of these, this collaboration that we're doing back and forth. If the internet is down, we lose access, we lose connectivity to each other. We can't have that video call, and it's not nearly as easy to go to a coffee shop anymore due to fear of infection and COVID and all the things. So making sure that the internet at all of your offices and your houses and mobile technologies are as reliable as possible is really critical. Lastly, increasing your local network capability and capacity, because all of these connections are being made to resources potentially in your office, especially when you have a hybrid scenario, when some people are back to the office, some people are working remotely, either temporarily or permanently. Making sure your local network is as stable as possible is absolutely critical. And that actually is a perfect segue into Ryan and Datto and their presentation on how they can help with Datto networking and some of the technologies that they have available. So with that, I thank you guys for your time, and I will turn it over to Ryan.
Hey, thank you so much, Jason. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. I appreciate nothing more than working with great partners like you and LogicSpeak, and definitely looking forward to that launch. I'd really like to check out Atlanta one of these days. 48 times, I think, is the magic number. Also, best thing I've learned so far, clean out my fridge before the next Zoom call. Super unique, really cool idea, and something that I'd be embarrassed to show some of the people that I Zoom with on a day-to-day basis. So we'll work on that. Today, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how technology plays into this piece and the concept that Jason just shared. To give you a quick introduction, my name is Ryan Grinrod. I work at Datto. I'm what's called a product specialist, specifically working with our networking solutions. I'm extremely passionate about network connectivity for a number of reasons, and that's only accelerated over the course of the last 6 or so months, prior to, leading up to, and then also after we got hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been with the company for about 3 years. In that time, I've worked with all of our products, but again, specialized in network connectivity. And prior to that, I actually also worked in managed services. And before that, for many, many moons, I was in the wireless industry working for Verizon Wireless. And there too, my specialty was connectivity, but more so mobile connectivity. So during the time that we have today, we're going to cover a few different things. Firstly, there will be a shameless plug. Who is Datto? Just want to make sure on the everybody on the call knows who we are, where we come from, and what makes us unique. We're going to talk about how critical networking is today and what some of the ways are to solve those problems. So what we've seen is that network connectivity is more and more critical than ever it had been in the past, and we'll talk about why that is. We've seen a trend where many, many, many small businesses have begun to, if not had already, moved to managed networking services so that they can scale network connectivity in a way that allows them to operate safely and securely, no matter where they are. And then I'm going to share with you an example of what some of our partners had done post-COVID-19 in a reactive situation to get their employees up and running more quickly by having access to the right types of tools that they would be able to do so remotely in a safe way. To give you a little background on Datto, Datto as a company, in my mind, really eludes the great American success story. So our company was founded in 2007. Our founder, Austin McCord, went to the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. He graduated from school in 2007, and like all good college students, moved right back in with his parents. He was a developer, and he had a good idea, and he had vision. And what he wanted to accomplish is he wanted to offer a solution that would give enterprise quality backup and disaster recovery that scaled well from a pricing perspective to a small or a medium business, so that rather than just having data backed up, they had access to that data at all times with really the flick of a switch or the click of a mouse, such that they would only be limited to the experience of maybe a few seconds of downtime maximum. He effectively came out with what became the Datto solution, and quickly Datto became an industry leader, working only through the channel, meaning that we work specifically with our partners and providing solutions that would allow our partners to keep their clients connected to their data at all times, no matter what type of disaster might occur. As the industry leader, we've grown fast. So we now have 23 offices worldwide, over 1,700 employees, and that number continues to grow rapidly. And we have 16,000 partners delivering managed services with at least one, and in many cases, more Datto products in the mix. Through those relationships, we have opened up local offices in 9 different countries, so we operate internationally. and our reach spans over 1 million small businesses around the world. So Datto started out in our founder's basement, and now we impact over 1 million businesses worldwide. Today, though, we're here to talk about connectivity more so than Datto and what put Datto on the map. The overarching principle that I'm going to illustrate throughout the presentation is that the network is mission critical, and that's regardless of the size of your business or the vertical that you work within. At one time, network connectivity was paramount in the enterprise space, but today it's critical of all businesses, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. One story that I like to share that illustrates this example came through one of our partners. As you may have gathered through my many trips to Atlanta without getting out of the airport, I travel quite a bit. And when I travel, I have the opportunity to talk to our partners and also in many cases, some of their clients. One thing that I know from traveling, and I'd be willing to venture a guess and would love to see some hands raised if you're in agreement or not, is that for me, Wi-Fi connectivity is probably the most important thing that happens for me when I go to a hotel. And industry studies support that conclusion. Many folks choose proper Wi-Fi connectivity above and beyond the importance of a good night's sleep when they go to a hotel. So where does this apply to a small business? Well, there was this partner who I spoke to was up in Canada. He was actually attending a family event. His sister was getting married. He was excited about the event. He figured that he'd have an opportunity to see some people he hadn't seen in a while, have a few drinks, have a good time. And he was business oriented and he had a really busy job. So he thought to himself, hey, while I'm there, after I have a few drinks and after I have a good time and after I have my meal, when my wife goes off to the dance floor, I'm going to have an opportunity to get on my phone, download that file, and work on the project that I'm behind on delivering. So just as planned, he goes to the event, he has a good time, he has, from what he tells me, one too many drinks. That all being said, he still stays on task, and after dinner, his wife goes out dancing, like at every other wedding he's attended. Out comes the smartphone, he clicks on the attachment and realizes that he doesn't have proper bandwidth. He can't download that file, and he can't get done the work that he had planned on getting completed. So he says to himself, no big deal. When I get to my room tonight, I'll pull out the laptop, I'll connect, and I'll get this done, figuring that the venue was just over capacity. So the event concludes, he goes back up to his room, of course, as planned, out comes the laptop, and guess what happens? Unable to successfully connect to Wi-Fi, download the attachment, and complete his task. So he goes to bed. The next day he wakes up. When he's checking out of the hotel, he gets interviewed like you would at any hotel when checking out. Mr. Customer, how was your experience? He says, hey, overall, everything was good. I slept well. The food was good. The amenities were great. The water in the hot tub was hot. If I had one complaint, it was I had a project I needed to deliver for work. I couldn't connect to your Wi-Fi, and now it's Saturday, and I have to go home, connect to the internet, and I have to work on work rather than going to my son's baseball game. So the hotel manager overheard this conversation, interjected, and asked for some more feedback. Our partner was relatively enterprising, and so he was actually able to managed to pivot this into an opportunity to do a site survey, a Wi-Fi analysis, and then to come forward with a proposal on how he would improve Wi-Fi connectivity at that hotel. The story culminates where our partner presents that proposal to the hotel management group. The hotel management group has a budget. They choose to allocate their budget, $1 million, putting in a new pool. Totally get it. New pools are sexy, and I like a nice pool when I go to a hotel, just not as much as I like being able to get on Wi-Fi. A few weeks go by. Interesting timing. A local business owner enters that very same hotel. He's looking to host his annual conference, and he's vetting out a few different hotels. He gets wined and dined. He gets the 5-star treatment. At lunchtime, out comes the smartphone. He looks to get on email, and guess what happens? Can't connect. So he ends up going to the hotel directly across the street, finding that they had a better quality Wi-Fi service available, and he booked his event there, which cost this hotel a few $100,000. Ultimately, what happens is the hotel reaches back out to our partner. They apologize profusely. They ask him to move forward with the Wi-Fi infrastructure upgrade, and they now have managed networking services in all 5 of their resorts, and they're currently adding a 6th. For them, this has turned into a game changer. They've seen an increase in bookings, obviously barring the recent events of COVID-19, but they've seen an increase in bookings and events planned, and that has paid for the networking service and then some. So it's turned into a really good investment for this hotel management group and a really lucrative partnership for our partner. So that's just one example of many that shows why networking is mission critical to businesses really of all sizes. And this was more of a boutique type hotel, not your normal large enterprise, big box Marriott type experience. So what's caused this increase in complexity and demand? Well, the first thing that's happened in our industry is device overload. So if I go back in a time machine, think back about 10, 15, maybe a little bit further years, this happened, the wireless evolution. So prior to that, networking was easy. You had a device at the edge of the network, and behind that, you had wires that connected all of the other machines that you need to function on a day-to-day basis, machines like workstations and servers. But now folks were coming into the office and expecting to be able to work anywhere at any time, no matter what device they had in their hand. In addition to wireless devices, we saw additional support needed for business tools. In the very simplest form, you have machines like multi-purpose copiers. Not only are they expected to be connected at all times, but businesses want to be able to connect them wirelessly, which puts a heavy tax on networking and on bandwidth. More prevalent to today's times, we see consumer electronics coming into small and medium-sized businesses. I actually have a partner who proactively manages and maintains coffee machines that are Wi-Fi enabled. More realistically and more commonly, we see devices like smart gadgets, thermostats. That helps a small business control energy costs. Security systems, keeping their premises safe and secure from outside threats, allowing them to control who can and cannot enter the facility. Lighting systems, again, another play at keeping energy costs minimized so that they can continue to generate revenue in a profitable way. This trend is expected to continue. More and more devices are going to lead to a total of 75 billion connected things in use worldwide by 2025, according to industry analysts. Now, that's not the only thing that's caused the increase of complexity and importance relating to networking in the small and medium business space. We've also seen an exponential growth in cloud computing. No longer are we all accessing all of our data that we need and all of our line of business applications by leveraging on-premise devices like servers. Today, most computing happens in the cloud. Looking at trends, private cloud applications and companies that have $1 billion in revenue in 2000, there were 0. In 2010, there was only one company generating $1 billion in revenue by offering private cloud services. Just 10 years later, there's 86. When we look at software, software is now being consumed as a service, and that is growing exponentially as well. Think about Office 365. Jason had mentioned this. No longer do we require ourselves to be on-premise in order to access those applications and to be productive. Today, we access those applications through the cloud, which allows us to collaborate and to connect in ways that we weren't able to in the past. If you take a look at this chart, it's predicted and expected that on-premise services and software solutions will be extinct by 2032. So in total, the industry, from a revenue perspective, really dictates and indicates how this trend will culminate. So today, or last year, there were $199 billion being spent on cloud computing. There are some breakdowns in this study in terms of how that impacts different verticals and regions. By 2027, that's expected to be up to $760 billion. And then we had more recently, and very interesting to me, the impact of COVID-19. So this had an impact not only on you as a small business owner, but also on IT professionals. what I call the new frontier presented new challenges. For IT professionals, it impacted their ability to operate efficiently and to scale. They found that they shifted from a proactive monitoring and maintenance program where they could proactively ensure that their clients didn't experience downtime to one that was more reactive in nature. They also experienced geographical challenges. Now all of our employees are working remotely. How are we going to manage that heavy workflow, and how can we scale our services in a useful way to ensure that our employees can be productive? We're going to look shortly at some impacts to security. There was really an increase in vulnerabilities as a result of COVID-19, and I have some interesting stats to show you in that regard. Quality of service is interesting too. So I myself work remotely. I'm used to being on Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call. What I found though is that when my kids were also competing for the same bandwidth that I was used to using and having a good quality experience with, my experience was degraded. In fact, I found that oftentimes I'd be on a Zoom call, my two children would be in the back room also on a Zoom call, and all three of us were having difficult time keeping video running. So our partners, managed service providers, and if not that being the case, internal IT teams had to pivot and had to figure out a way to effectively deliver a high quality of service to folks who are now working from anywhere, sometimes at home, sometimes in a coffee shop, sometimes outdoors. I oftentimes find myself working at a coffee shop. So let's take a look at some of the risks. I find this to be really compelling and interesting. After COVID-19 hit, Homeland Security released a number of articles talking about some of the increased risks that they were seeing in the industry relating to IT. They said that cyber criminals and malicious actors were exploiting COVID-19 by targeting organizations with malware and ransomware. Reuters said that the movement to work from home increased vulnerability to exploitation for all organizations, and that reactive measures need to be taken immediately. The head of Juniper Systems said that enterprises should expect an increase in denial of service attacks, phishing scams, and malware. An interesting one here, having consumer grade products at the edge of our networks was something that was most heavily exploited. So one group of malicious actors figured out how to hack into all of the Linksys routers that were operating on a certain firmware. These devices were cloud managed, but they weren't cloud managed in a secure way, so they weren't using two-factor authentication. So essentially what they did is they designed an algorithm. That algorithm allowed them to guess passwords for folks' admin access to each of these routers, and they were then able to use a tactic called spoofing. So what would happen is the user behind this network would type in a website, maybe google.com. Something would show up on their screen that looks like google.com. And when the user clicked on one of the links that showed up in that search query, they would be exploited and exposed to malware, generally in the form of ransomware. These stories go on and on and on. If you look at Wi-Fi, one of the common vulnerabilities were passwords that aren't complex. So somebody who's in your local area can get into your Wi-Fi network. They could then see all the devices connected, and they can access now your company's data because you're managing that data from home. And ultimately, these organizations recommended keeping the network safe and secure by connecting to home offices with managed routers over VPN connections, and by moving away from simple passwords on Wi-Fi. Further increase in cloud computing as a result of COVID-19, we see here that Microsoft Teams passed 44 million daily active users. This statistic is from a couple months back. I'm willing to gather that they're now over 50 million. And everybody on this call for certain has been exposed to Zoom and other programs that are operated in the cloud like Slack, all which require connectivity to external resources like the internet in order to be accessible. So the good news that industry experts shared is that outsourcing IT from managed service providers can actually be more effective in terms of both time to implement and effectiveness, not just in general terms, but specifically in environments where folks are looking to access their company's data and line of business applications anywhere at any time, no matter what. Datto as a company does an annual survey. We call it the State of the MSP. Most years we survey managed service providers and we look for feedback from them. What's going well, what's not going so well, what are the threats that they see? Last year we did it a little bit differently. Instead, we focused on small business owners. We reached out to a sample of 1,100 small businesses with an annual spend of $100 billion in IT specifically. They told us that the most common challenges that concern them include security, the ability to access and receive in short terms technical support and maintenance, and also the challenge of controlling costs when it comes to IT spend. Those who outsource IT, interestingly, said that the reason they chose to do it is because there's an increasing complexity in network connectivity and IT management in general. And they found that managed service providers had access to more tools and more solutions to solve some of those complex problems. They also found, interestingly, that it was more cost-effective to outsource IT services, not always in all cases, because many of these folks do co-managed IT, but in some cases to managed service providers who offer managed networking services. And they also found that when dealing with a managed service provider, there was less of a gap in skill set because managed service providers generally incorporate a grouping of talent that allows them to focus on things like infrastructure, network connectivity, security solutions, ad infinitum, so that they have a specialty for each different aspect of IT that might be of value to a smaller or medium-sized business. These folks cared about cost, technical capabilities, the experience, and the quality of service they received when calling in for support, and also things like customer service, all things that companies like LogicSpeak specialize in. So managed connectivity, from a managed service provider's perspective, incorporates the concept of what I call network continuity. And to me, network continuity means having a setup in place where no matter where you go, no matter what happens, you have the ability to access the data and the people who are important to you. Things that you can expect when you have managed networking services in place are a secure, high available, redundant connectivity network that allows you to collaborate with your coworkers at all times. Within, you find a complete network design. That'll include devices like wireless access points, managed switches, business class firewalls and routers, and also interesting devices like managed power. And I can talk to you a little bit about what makes some of these cool shortly. For a managed service provider, they generally leverage tools that offer native multi-tenant cloud management. So what does that mean for the small business? Well, it means that the folks that they're reaching out to for support and that they're counting on to keep them connected, regardless of where they are able to proactively monitor, inspect, and when it comes to it, reactively correct any issues that may occur within that environment's network. And these companies generally use powerful hardware that have rich SMB-centric software features that enable those companies to have redundancies in place and also to keep their environment safe and secure. This is just a quick view of some of the solutions that Datto as a company offers and that our partners have the ability to access and to put in place at their clients' locations. One quick example of where these solutions are unique in the industry is just by looking at our edge router category. These devices have 4G LTE on board. So every firewall that Datto ships and every firewall that our partners manage not only give them the ability to manage security effectively, but also give their clients a redundancy plan in case their internet service provider fails. Our partners' clients are able to be connected to their data at all times, no matter what. So a quick look at how some of our partners pivoted when COVID-19 hit. As I mentioned earlier, companies who specialize in being proactive were forced into a reactive situation. What they found is that leveraging tools supplied by companies like Datto, and there are others with similar sets of tools available, were able to give them the ability to do zero-touch deployments, which means that they could put in business class tools at your now work-from-home environment without actually having to get on site. What they were doing is they were ordering the equipment they would need for a work-from-home environment. They were shipping it directly to their clients' end users. They were configuring the equipment in the cloud controller before the equipment actually arrived on site. And then they were instructing the client's employees to call and schedule a time where they would get on a video conference and show them how to install, basically by plugging in the new equipment. Tools that they leveraged were devices like our D200. This gives them the ability to offer secure, performant, cloud-managed network connectivity. This device in and of itself is not only a router, but also has a business class firewall built in. As recommended by industry experts, it supports VPN connectivity. So now you can access corporate data in a secure way. It also has LTE on board, as mentioned before. So in the event that your home cable were to go down, you have a backup plan in place. Further than that, our partners were able to manage content to ensure that the content access wouldn't put any company data at risk. Further, we talked a little bit about having complex passwords built into Wi-Fi. They were able to ship and pre-configure access points, providing a better quality of service so that their clients didn't have to deal with bandwidth constraints, and then also giving them control so that they can manage login credentials and authentication, ensuring that folks getting on the network wirelessly were doing so in a secure way. More than that, they have the ability to segregate traffic. So they could do things like have a business environment where they control authentication and then offer a separate experience for folks who are looking to get online to do, say, online schooling, or to just do personal things like my son's in the back playing Xbox today. Another tool that was really popular here was managed power. So the device you see on display here is a managed surge protector. In and of itself, it doesn't sound that awesome, but when you think about what it does, it turned out to be a game changer for the folks who are now operating from home and for our partners. Essentially, what you have is a tool that allows you to remotely manage power on each of the outlets in the managed power device. In this case, you have 6 outlets, and our partners would have their end users plug devices like modems and routers into these, and what they would be able to do not only is to remotely reboot a device. So if you think about a time where you lose connection to the internet, generally a device needs to be rebooted. Our partners had the ability not only to do that on demand, but they could proactively schedule reboots to keep devices in a state where they're less likely to lock up and you're less likely to drop that Zoom call or that Teams call, depending on which application you prefer. And even cooler than that, these devices are smart enough where they can automate that task, where a device like a managed power solution detects when a modem locks up and automatically reboots that device, keeping the network up and running and keeping all the folks depending on it productive at all times. Other things that managed service providers and managed networking solutions include that are really valued by small business owners, as mentioned in our study, are support functions. And companies like Datto, through companies like LogicSpeak, offer solutions from a support perspective like 24/7/365 support, call, email, or chat, even on Christmas and Easter. We as a company offer a lifetime warranty, and we do next business day replacements. So this gives our partners the ability to ensure that you have limited downtime. Should for any reason a device fail, they can have a new one in hand the next day. And given what we described earlier, they could even drop ship that directly to your office or maybe even your home office. They also offer things like automated firmware and software updates. So this keeps the environment safe and secure, and it minimizes any overhead so that when you do have to call the help desk, there are more folks available at a company like LogicSpeak who can help you solve those problems. Jason, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some of the things that have worked well for other partners relating to managed networking. It's really been a pleasure and an honor. I look forward to working with you more in the future. And I think now would be time to turn it back to you for any questions that might be out in the field.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for all of that information. That was really great. And so I really appreciate all the detail, and hopefully that was really beneficial for our owners to kind of understand the landscape and also just what's possible from a networking perspective for their businesses. So that was awesome. So real quickly, we're going to take a few questions. One that just came in. What would you recommend a business owner do to make sure they have in place to work remotely long term? So if the decision is that they're going to move to a long-term remote work solution, what do they need in place? And so I'll take that one, and then Ryan, feel free to add anything, if you have something there to add as well. What I would say from a remote work perspective is you have to make sure that your data is stored in the cloud, or at the very least synced to the cloud, so that it's not difficult to work remotely. So a lot of times what we found is companies have local file servers, they have local applications, and then when they go to work remotely, they have to create a VPN connection to get into that system, and that just makes things slower. Downloading large files over the internet then gets to be painful, and so that's really the first thing, is to adopt a cloud platform like Office 365 or obviously G Suite as well, either way, so that your collaboration platform has all of your data, all of your collaboration capabilities. And then, as we talked about on the webinar, lean into adopting new processes and new ways of communicating by integrating things like Microsoft Teams. We haven't talked about this a lot, but Teams also has capabilities for room systems, so that you can have a computer connected to microphones, omnidirectional microphones, cameras, speakers around the room, so to make the experience as good as possible. But then, lastly, create a culture of remote work, which is really that people are going to continue to reach out to each other. People are going to continue to interact over the internet, and that you actually will increase productivity and get more done versus it being a sidebar or something that you're just trying out. So anyway, those are the things that I would say.
Yeah, and I agree with all that, Jason. I think a contingency plan is what's most critical, and you highlighted that. So not only having data in the cloud so that it can be managed, and this doesn't relate to my specialty, but also having that data backed up. So a platform from a third party that replicates that data, so that should you lose connectivity to that cloud service, you still have the ability to access that data. Or maybe somebody accidentally deletes a file. I know I do it more often than I care to admit. And somebody like yourself, Jason, has the ability to roll that file back and restore it. And then when we look at that from a connectivity perspective, a backup plan for internet connectivity. So how are you connected? Do you have, as you mentioned earlier, the ability to connect securely over VPN? And what should happen? How do you stay productive if you lose internet service, say at the home office? Do you have a client VPN software available and enabled so that you could go work from your local Starbucks? Or is there a backup circuit available at a low cost, maybe like LTE? So those are some of the things that stand out to me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome for sure, absolutely. And since you touched on it, the question may come up, once my data is in the cloud, how do I maintain control, and how do I make sure it's backed up? It used to be that backup technologies were, you had the file server, you had a tape drive or an external hard drive. We took it home every night, or every other night, to make sure we always had access to our data. But now Microsoft has our data, right? And so thankfully, we have solutions that are able to back up collaboration platforms like Office 365 and G Suite. It's called SaaS protection. It's actually provided for by Datto. So Datto is another Datto product. It wasn't intended to be a pitch, but for our customers that have all their data in the cloud or in Office 365, we back up their data 3 times a day. Retention, we can save up to a year, or there's another option for infinite retention. So that way, in case anything goes wrong, an employee quits, there's ransomware that that encrypts all of your files in your online platform. You can be protected even in those cases, and we can restore that data directly from the cloud to the cloud. So that's been a huge benefit as well, especially, and it's even more critical now that our data is out there, in the cloud, and we're using it remotely. So, okay. Well, all right. Well, at this point, I wanted to just let me get back to my slide here with the question, with the contact information. No, I don't have it actually on this one. Sorry. But so what I did wanted to say was thank you guys all for attending. I really appreciate everyone who joined and joined the webinar, and hopefully you found it informational. If there's anything else that we can do, feel free to reach out to LogicSpeak, and we'll be happy to marshal any questions over to Dado as well if there's anything that I can do to help there.
Just to jump in, I think we just got another question in.
Okay, go ahead.
What is the best way to invest or upgrading an existing office network when we are working remotely? Actually, that one was answered already.
Okay. Sorry, you broke up there a little bit, Jason. Anything else coming in?
No, I think that one was actually answered.
Okay. Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. Well, like I said, as always, thank you guys for attending. This is the latest in our series of webinars. We'll have one next quarter as well. So look for information on that from LogicSpeak about our next topic. We're super grateful to have you guys join, and have a great rest of your day.